Friday, June 17th. Let's talk PlayStation. Alright, so E3 is pretty much done now. It's just now wrapping up, and the good thing is, you know, after, like, the conferences were all done, now we're getting all these interviews and whatnot. We're getting all these details cleared up that we didn't previously know, so that's kind of what this show is going to be all about for this time. So we'll jump right into the first thing, which actually isn't super E3 related, but still pretty important, which is that PlayStation VR. Sony is saying that they're probably going to be supply constrained for when it launches come October 13th, and, you know, Sony's basically going into detail about that, saying, like, you know, it's such a new thing. It's in its infancy right now, and they can't necessarily gauge consumer interest that well in terms of just how much demand there's going to be once it actually launches, and it's getting to a point where they feel like it'll probably be in a situation where it will be supply constrained. So we all saw that new footage and the actual formal announcement of the new God of War, and of course it looked awesome, but we really want to know what's going on there after the footage we had actually seen. So now we actually got some more details about that. So the one thing actually initially that Sony Santa Monica mentioned is that when actually deciding to develop this game, they were looking at Norse mythology or Egyptian mythology as well. They said half the team was really into that, but they opted for Norse mythology so they could focus more on Kratos himself. A couple of other details about the new God of War game, which is that it's no more loading screens. It's going to be a more in-depth RPG system. Huge set pieces, as always. Sony said, like, oh yeah, you should expect that more or less, which is why they didn't really show that too much at E3. And then they said plenty of collectibles and crafting resources, which is, of course, another thing that's entirely new. Lots of exploration and hidden pathways. And Sony Santa Monica had even given like a full-on sentence regarding what this game's truly about, and it's about Kratos teaching his son how to be a god, and his son teaching Kratos how to be human again. And even the big answer here is that apparently this is an actual full-on like sequel continuing the story of God of War. This is the same Kratos. Actually is a new voice actor as well. We all know T.C. Carson usually does God of War. He is actually not going to be involved in this project. Somebody else entirely new is doing it. I forgot the actor's name, by the way, unfortunately, sorry. But yeah, they're going with a new voice actor, and of course, obviously, if you have seen the gameplay, and I'm probably displaying it to you now, yeah, it's entirely different, and they're really taking a different approach to this. What I find interesting is that you're going from Greek mythology to Norse mythology in the same story. I guess, you know, if it's a game, you can do whatever the hell you want, but I find that a little bizarre. But either way, this is still continuing Kratos' story. And yeah, they're obviously going for a different direction, and that's a good thing for God of War. I mean, it sucks if you're the kind of person that doesn't want, you want their traditional God of War style, and you love what that franchise was about, and you want more of that. But I think I speak for a lot of people when I say, you know, we want to see a little something. We want to see some things mixed up a little bit. We want to see a little bit of originality, especially in a growing aging franchise. So I feel it's welcome. So next up, we're going to be talking about basically PS4 Neo and Xbox Scorpio, because that's kind of like the whole rage of this past show and conversations and whatnot. So actually, the first thing is that Sony had to issue a statement, more or less. Or actually, Shuhei Yoshida even just responded casually on Twitter, but then a couple of journalists got the confirmation from this as well from Sony. A lot of people are, saying, games like God of War, Days Gone, these games that were on the floor, like Horizon Zero Dawn, they were saying these games were actually running on PS4 Neo and not standard PS4s, which Sony basically replied saying, no, these games are still running on standard PlayStation 4s, so don't worry about that. And I find this rather odd that Sony has to come out and... Well, I guess it's not entirely odd. I'm sure people definitely want to know if, say to make the game look as good as possible. Of course, they want to show you the best footage possible. So yeah, that it could be a situation where maybe Sony did that. But yeah, they're saying standard PS4s, and I feel like that is quite obvious that they're running on standard PS4s. And I guess it's most obvious because... I don't know. I mean, people always look for this deception in the games industry, but the thing is like Uncharted 4 just came out. Is that game not proof that that Horizon, God of War, and Days Gone are running on standard PS4s? Of course they're running on standard PS4s. Or at the very least, they're absolutely going to be supported on standard PS4s anyway, from what we already know. That's the thing. The Order 1886 and Uncharted 4. It's that same conversation we always go back to with how consoles are underpowered and all that bullshit, but those two games alone have easily proven just how much you can actually pull, just how much you can do on these machines. So, but yes, they are, all the games shown at E3 were apparently on standard PlayStation 4s. Alright, so Sony Interactive Entertainment, I have to remember to say that now, not Computer Entertainment. Sony Interactive Entertainment President and CEO Andrew House commented about PS4 Neo and why it wasn't actually at the show. So we got a couple of quotes going on here. He says, the point of confirming the existence of PlayStation 4 Neo and the bare bones of the plan last week was about not disappointing the fan base, who would obviously come to E3 with high expectations of all kinds of announcements. And from past experience, the worst thing you can do is disappoint and pull the rug away from people. That's why we went out. That's why we went out last week and said, yes, it does exist, but don't expect to see it at E3. And I think that was the right thing to do. I absolutely am also with him. I think that was the right thing to do. At least for me, I mean, hell, if I was running a big company like that and I had this, situation where my consumers are expecting things, I would let them know, hey, this is not going to happen, or blah, 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 especially with the games industry and E3. Makes total sense. And people were like, oh, why wasn't Neo at the conference? It's like, dude, he already came out and said, like, it's not going to be there. And I can see how you can maybe think otherwise, because, of course, even if it was going to be at E3, he would probably, they would want to lie and surprise you with it or something. But I think he was being genuine. It's not going to be at E3, and that's the thing. He even confirmed it, like yes, Neo is a real thing, but we are not ready to talk about it, and it's not going to be at E3, so that was kind of the situation there. Another interesting quote that Andrew House mentioned is about actually how they're trying to keep people in their ecosystem, and he was even, referring to the fact that PC gaming is on the rise. He said, we've traditionally seen that some of the core audiences tends to gravitate back to high-end PCs at some point because there are these people who want the finest graphical performance, so here's a great opportunity to have them stay within our ecosystem. Not very surprising words from Andrew House. Of course, he wants people to stay within the PlayStation 4 ecosystem. He wants people to keep buying consoles, but I think that's kind of the whole situation here, is that the whole point of PS4 Neo, the whole point of Xbox Scorpio, is that Sony and Microsoft do see this growing demand for high frame rate, high resolution, and people wanting the latest and greatest. And this is what I mentioned even before these things were even rumored, and how I kind of predicted that this was like where gaming was going to be, where I said like, oh, how mobile phones come out like every single year or something, and they just get stronger and stronger, but there's forward compatibility. Microsoft, with Xbox Scorpio, have already commented about this and kind of relating it to that, saying, oh, people want the latest thing, but you don't have to buy it right away, and we can do, full compatibility within our ecosystem. Sony and Microsoft are both acknowledging this. They both see it, and it's a proven, like, sort of market for, other, things in the like tech industry, for example. Like this kind of already works, and consoles at some point do need to evolve into something, and that's kind of like where it should probably go to, and that is where it is going to. And it's even more polarizing because Sony's in the position where it's like, for the longest time, it's just like, they're Sony, it's PlayStation, they've got their own in-house names and everything, they've got all these developers under their belt, all this all these IPs under their belt, and then you've got Microsoft, who, yeah, they're a console manufacturer as well, but they also are in charge of, they have a big role in PC, which is, Windows, and their games can be moved over to Windows. And now it seems like, obviously, Microsoft's entire strategy moving forward is actually to not be as concerned about beating PlayStation. And in fact, the past few interviews that Phil Spencer has been in, and even more so from their E3 press conference, which is even more so solidifying this future for them, which is that they truly are not that concerned about, say, beating Sony, quote unquote. It's all about them unifying Xbox, making it more of a platform and not just specifically a console, giving consumers options, and it's giving people that choice, whether you can do a console or you can, say, do PC, but either way, if you're going to be in either of those platforms, that's being away from PlayStation. But, like, again, they're not really concerned with keeping people away from PlayStation, because if that were the case, then they'd want to be, beating their sales or something. And Microsoft just kind of realizes, like, yeah, they straight up, like, lost to PlayStation 4, but their whole idea moving forward just really is kind of irrelevant to PlayStation at that point. Otherwise, they keep focusing on Xbox, keeping their games only on Xbox, encouraging people to not play on PC and move to Xbox, but that's just not where they're going now. Andrew House actually even commented directly against Xbox Scorpio and said, I was surprised by the step of announcing something over a year ahead of time. The dynamics of the tech industry are such that there's a much heavier emphasis on immediate gratification than there ever was. A lot of that has to do with how Apple has very cleverly and elegantly managed the available now approach. So yes, that was a slight surprise to me. And then I'd like to also follow this up with a quote from Sony's Jim Ryan. He actually also replied to this saying, we obviously follow chatter and speculation online, and some of it has appeared to be fairly well-grounded, so there wasn't too much of, that wasn't a particular surprise to us. Good luck to them with their strategy, and we've got our own strategy, and we'll pursue that. We're very happy with the way things are going. Fall 2017 is quite a long way off. This is pretty telling, because this is pretty much kind of giving us an idea of like the position Sony is in, and the position is that PS4 Neo is probably much further along than we like are led to believe, because we, you know, the earliest rumors that we heard for PS4 Neo is that it actually is going to be releasing this year. You know, that's when Scorpio is coming out, is holiday 2017 or fall 2017. It's a long way. And Microsoft is aiming for a full-on, straight-up 4K console like that, and Microsoft's even saying like this console won't make much sense to you unless you have a 4K television. So it's becoming very evident that PS4 Neo is absolutely going to be a, say, comparably weaker console compared to Scorpio. Like Scorpio is aiming for a pretty high performance target. And Sony Sony knows that, and Sony also knows that they're in a position where like they are probably sticking to what they are doing right now, and they're not trying to necessarily, you know, one-up Microsoft in terms of a power struggle, and that's the thing, you know. Sony's in a winning position right now. Microsoft, you know, not really that concerned anymore. But it's like whether Microsoft was winning or Sony was winning or all that stuff's irrelevant nowadays, because they've both been in the position of like who has the most power. They've both been in the position of like who is the sales leader. Like those things become irrelevant when you realize that both of them are doing their own thing, and they are just going in a direction where they're hoping it'll work out for either of them, because they know they're both going in kind of separate directions. So Sony's like pretty much saying like, yeah, PS4 Neo, we are going to be doing this thing, and yeah, it's probably not going to be as strong, but we're going to be releasing it relatively soon, and you know, we hope consumers see the benefit to it, and that's just kind of the way it's going to be. It's going to be an interesting next few years to see how this all unfolds, especially with like virtual reality, for example. I mean, Sony has their own virtual reality box. Microsoft has already confirmed that they're not doing their own VR box, but they're actually exploring partners to how they'll do VR with Xbox. There's still a lot we don't know, but it's pretty telling that the future is going to be more or less drastically different. Alright, so those are just some of the E3 interviews and things that I wanted to talk to you guys about. If you didn't notice, there wasn't no Ryan on Gaming because we kind of had the whole E3 video already, and so hey, that's what's actually happened. If you did not see the E3 video, go check it out. Not only is it a complete recap of Sony's entire E3 press conference, but we also do my entire impressions of the show, and I also answer some Twitter questions from you guys. So that was actually great. We always do it every year, and we had another good one. We'll do Ryan on Gaming next week, so that'll be all well and good. God of War is ending soon. Next few weeks it'll finally be done, and we'll be moving on to another Let's Play, which has already been predetermined. So, sorry, no voting or anything like that, but sorry, that's the way it is, man. And that's pretty much it. So, that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me. I'll see you guys next Friday.